Welcome to the podcast called Beaten. This is episode 1 of quite a few. Okay, so I'm filming these or recording these as I go, so we don't know how many episodes this is going to take. This is a follow-up to the much lauded after podcast I did a while ago about me being homeless, and this is the follow-up to it. Many people asked what happened after you became not homeless anymore, and this is going to be quite an eye-opener. In actual fact, I'd been writing a book about this for the last few years, and it's not nearly done yet, so I decided to do a podcast about it instead. Well as, because I don't want to do it instead of, because I still want to write the book, I still want to finish the book. Hopefully by the time this podcast has finished in its entirety, I'll have finished the book, and then you can all buy it as well, just to go with it, because books are always better, right? They are always better. That's all you have to know. Anyway, does anybody want to know what happened? I'm going to be talking about this off the top of my head. I've got some notes here, and I'm going to explain what happened, hopefully in some sort of semblance of order, right? Episode 1 is the time between getting into my new flat and the time I got out of my new flat, and you'll find out how that happened during the course of this entire podcast, episode 1. So, if you are ready, let's get cracking onto it. Right, so first thing we have to notice that I've changed the names of everybody concerned in this to protect their identities. Not that some of them deserve protecting, but that's another matter. So if you remember rightly, if you have watched or listened to my podcast about me being homeless, you'll know that at the end of the last episode, I got the keys to my new flat, right? And the flat itself was, well, it was minimal. It was so small, right? Although having just been homeless, it was a godsend. But in itself, it was small. It was a bed sit. So basically that's, I had a living room where the bed was also in the living room, so I slept in the living room, I had a kitchen which was so small. I've never seen a kitchen that small in my entire life, but it was what it was. And it had a bathroom, and that was all, right? But can't complain. It's better than being on the streets, right? It definitely was. But a lot of you may have thought that once I got off the streets, my life just suddenly improved and everything was amazing and everything else, right? But no, it wasn't. Having just come off the streets, where it was really bad and obviously a difficult time, I then went through a period of struggling to adapt. That happens quite often, by the way. Homeless people, when they come off the streets and get a place, or they stay in a hotel or whatever, they find it difficult to live in a property, right? But aside from that, this was the first time I'd ever lived on my own. I was not self-sufficient at all. I was 20 years of age, and I was not very worldly wise, right? I couldn't cope on my own. I struggled to keep the flat tidy and clean. I struggled to make food. I remember cooking cheese omelets were one of the things I made quite frequently, right? So but going back a little bit, after I just got my new place, right, it was a few days before Christmas, and that is the major thing. You know, I got in to my flat before Christmas, which was very important, and yeah, it was great, and I was enjoying it. Right, one of the things that I wanted to do always, I don't know why, and you're gonna think this is stupid, but when I was younger, I always, you know those tubs of chocolates, like Cadbury's Roses and Quality Street and all that, right? I always wanted to buy a tin to myself when I was older. That's a childhood dream, right? Okay, not necessarily a dream when I'm like an adult, but I decided that because I was able to now, I was old enough, I had my own place, I was able to. I actually did buy a whole tin of roses to myself. And yes, I ate the majority of them myself. Not all in one sitting, so that's good, isn't it? It's positives anyway. I remember going out to the supermarket and buying like massive crates of beer and just just having those in the flat. I was just basically throwing caution to the wind, doing everything that I wanted to do because I could, because I now could do it, and yeah, that's basically what I was doing, and I was enjoying it. The first amount of time, I just really enjoyed being in a flat on my own and being able to do what I want when I want to do it, and it was very freeing. But that, yeah, going back to the relationship I had with my mum around that time, don't forget she just kicked me out, and I just got a place, and I once I got my place, my mum invited. I'm trying to remember. To be honest with you, I have this little bit is very blurred, and I'm pretty certain that I went round for Christmas dinner, right? Because I was trying to think what I did for Christmas dinner for Christmas Day that year, because it was only a few days after I moved into my flat, and I remember, I definitely remember being at a meal because my eldest brother came to visit and we all had a meal together, and my brother was filled in about what had been happening because he had no idea that I'd even been on the streets. So yeah, that's obviously my mum was too ashamed to tell him that information anyway. Yeah, so I definitely remember that. I don't remember much else about what happened that day. I remember on New Year's Eve, my mum. See, this really annoyed me. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. This actually did annoy me. Right, for New Year that year, my mum invited me around for New Year's Eve. You know, to welcome in the new year and blah blah. I'm not much of a New Year's person. I can't be asked most of it, but she did invite me, and I thought, oh, that's good. I'll do that. So I I arrived, I think, just before the midnight on New Year's Eve, right? And I got there and my mum wasn't even there. My brother let me in to, for, but my mum wasn't there. She was spending New Year's Eve with her partner, and I was a bit annoyed about that because she specifically invited me around, and I thought that would be nice, but no. So I actually left about 2 minutes after midnight to go back home. So yeah, that was a bit of a disappointment for me. For a little while, I didn't have the best relationship with my mum. Not brilliant. I mean, she didn't ever come into my flat. She never ever. She came to my door a couple of times, but she never ever came in to have a look at my flat or to see where it was I was living. She didn't do that. I'm not quite sure why. On my birthday, it was my 21st birthday, and I was invited out then for a meal for my birthday. And this was very memorable because there was me, two brothers, my mum, and my mum's partner. And it was a little bit awkward because, again, after all the kicking out of home and being homeless business, that's still quite raw in my head, but I'm trying to put that to one side and I'm going out for a meal, right? And at the end of the meal, my mum offers me something for my birthday. It's 21st birthday, right? So a lot of people get something good for the birthday, but my mum offered me this, right? So basically, for the last so many amount of years, she and my dad had been paying into an insurance policy which would mature when I'm like 20 odd something, right? And for my birthday, my mum offered me 3 options. This was fun, right? She offered me 3 options. I didn't know how much this was going to be, by the way, but she offered me either to cash the money out myself, so to get the money from my insurance policy, which, by the way, this money is actually legally entitled to me. I'm the only one that can cash it out because it's mine, right? She's been paying into it, but it's in my name. Anyway, she offered me the chance to either cash it out and take the money, right? Or to carry on paying it myself and keep the policy open. Or the third option, behind door number 3, was to cash it out and give her the money for what she said I owed her for damage to I think she said that I damaged the garage lock on the door. When I was homeless, I broke into the garage. Was it a garage? Yeah, I think it was a garage. I broke into the garage when I was homeless, and it cost them money to fix the lock. So she's saying that I, as a gesture of goodwill, I could cash the money out and give her the money. So those were my options for my birthday. Guess what I chose? That's right, I chose to cash the money out myself because it's my money, right? And I need the money. I'm living on my own and I want the money, right? Not gonna lie, I do want it. So I never heard anything more from that at all. I was never given the money. That is another completely... Can I tell this story right now? Because it's quite it's something that happened years down the line. I didn't get the money basically for my birthday, my 21st birthday. I was offered it and she didn't give it to me at all. Maybe I'll talk about what actually happened a bit later in the series. I don't know, but yeah, it's quite the eye opener, gotta say. Right, so what happened after that was basically the relationship with my mum from the early times of me getting my own place, right? And for my birthday, actually, I mean, my mum only gave me that, but for that birthday, the 21st birthday, my brother, my eldest brother, he sent me some gift vouchers, Marks and Spencer's gift vouchers, to the tune of £200, which, like, 20 odd years ago, is it 20 years ago? More than that. 25, 26 years, yeah, 25 years ago, actually. No, that's a lot of money back then, by the way. So I was quite in awe of that. Anyway, aside from all of that, trying to fit in, trying to survive in this bedsit of mine was difficult. Making food, making, doing things, making my omelets, as I mentioned earlier. I was making omelets, and I was eating mash and beans and just basic stuff, right? But a lot of it is tinned stuff, and I couldn't afford a lot of stuff. I used to go to this place because as I mentioned in my last podcast, the way I managed to get this flat was through a local scheme, through a local charity organisation that paid for the deposit, or not paid for it, but guaranteed the deposit. It was a rent bond guarantee scheme, and they also helped with the initial transition of moving into a flat. But they also offered things like tins of food and stuff like that. And I just remember having all these like really basic, horrible, not horrible, I mean, I'm grateful for it, but not the sort of things that are going to nutritionally like enhance your life. You know, I remember sitting there one night when my electric had gone out because I was on a meter and I'd run out of coins. Sitting there with a one of those like fruit cocktail tins of fruit cocktail. Yeah, sat there because I couldn't cook anything because I didn't have an electric, and I had a fruit cocktail tin. Sat there in the dark eating that for my dinner. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that was going on there. I struggled to cook because I mean, aside from anything else, the kitchen was tiny. Right, it was so small. It had a sink, and it had a cooker in it, and it had some shelves in it, and it was so cramped. But when I had finished eating my food, I was terrible. I'm not gonna lie, I really was bad. I remember having stacks of plates just in the sink, just stacked up. Didn't wash them, didn't clean them or anything. I was so lazy. And other times I had my plates strewn about across the living room floor. Yeah, it was really bad. The other thing that I was doing was I was struggling with my rent. So like initially when I moved in, I wasn't working, so I was obviously getting most of the rent paid, but the excess rent that I had to pay out of my own pocket, I wasn't paying that very well. But then when at one point I got a job, and the transition meant that I no longer got the rent paid for me, I then had to pay it all myself, and I just found it difficult, and I just couldn't be bothered with it, and I really got myself in a mess, right? Total mess. One point, it was, I can't remember, I was getting like a few £100 behind on my rent, and my landlady used to come round. I lived in fear basically for a while of my landlady popping round to see me, to ask for the rent, and me have to come up with another excuse why I hadn't got any rent, why I couldn't pay it. I remember one time going out of my house, out for a walk, and seeing my landlady pull up outside my house, and me sort of hiding, because I didn't want to see her, obviously, because I was behind on my rent. Yeah, so that was happening. And then every payday I'd spend in the pub, just worried about the fact that I was behind on my rent and not being able to pay it. Another time, right, because this landlady was getting a bit like annoyed, as you would, right? I don't blame her, to be honest. I don't, I'm not here making excuses. I'm just saying it how it went down, right? One time she came to my flat, and I don't even think this is right, right? I don't think this is right what happened. I still don't think this is right what happened, even to this day, even though it was down to me to pay the rent. It was up to me to pay it, but I still think this is wrong. What happened was, right, she came to my flat and she said, right, okay, I'm going to take you down to your bank, and and you're going to withdraw the money and give to me, right? And I was like, right, okay. So that is actually what happened. She drove me down to my bank, right? We went inside. She stood there whilst I went to the counter, and I knew full well I did not have any money in my account. I knew full well that I did not have the money to pay her, because I had nothing in my account. It was like basically zero, if not less than zero, right? And she stood there waiting, and I was making excuses, saying, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I was like making out I had money, and but knowing full well that I didn't have the money. But I mean, I find that quite. Is that even legal? Can you try and force somebody, even if they owe you the money? Is that something a little bit wrong with that? I feel like there is anyway. Yeah, so that did actually happen. That was something that I remember very vividly. But it got to the stage where I actually owed them like 500 quid in the end, right? And we'll come back to that in a minute. The other thing that happened during the course of me settling in to this whole thing was I was this organisation that had got me the flat, right? They assigned me a key worker. That's somebody to try and help you with things, I guess, with things that you need helping with. And this was the start of a very, very long and horrible period of my life, right? This was I'm going to say all this started with this assigning of this key worker, and it ended up being like worse than the homeless thing, right? Which it just sounds bizarre. So you're gonna have to keep watching or keep listening to know what happened, right? So I was assigned this key worker. I was introduced to him, right? Again, I'm changing their names, so we're calling him Jason, right? And I was introduced to him, and I looked at him and I thought, hang on, I know him. I know who that is, because he used to go to school with me, and I thought, oh, fucking hell, this is embarrassing. Seriously. Anyway, yeah. So fortunately, it wasn't he wasn't the same person that I knew from when I was younger, which was a good thing, because he was a bit of a tearaway. Anyway. It turned his life around, apparently. So, yeah, he was going to be helping me do everything with anything that I need. So he did. But what he did was, it went over and above and beyond what he should have been doing. He started hanging around like all the time, and going out for walks with me. Taking me to places. I went to his house once. These are things that really not supposed to do. Yeah, it's kind of. I think you probably understand. It's not really it's not appropriate for. He's supposed to be there to help me and not to be my friend, basically. But it got to the point where I started. Well, I didn't just go to his house once. I went to his flat multiple times. He started. Well, I slept there one time. I just kind of fell asleep, and it turned out I started sleeping at his house every single day, like every day. His flat, it wasn't a house, it was his own flat. It wasn't much better than mine, but it was a bit bigger. And it was just kind of like I couldn't be asked going back to my own place. And I was sleeping at his all the time. And I was never at my own place. And the organisation who had helped me get the flat were a little bit knocked about that, because I was like, you know, they helped me get the place and I wasn't even staying there. I don't think they knew that I was staying at Jason's house. I don't know, because that would have been like against their rules. I'm sure it would have been. But yeah, I stayed there all the time. Like literally just, I remember staying on this like recliner chair that he had and sleeping on it every night. Not the most comfortable, if I'm being honest, but it got to the point where I was just like, I was just there all the time. I guess he was my friend then, rather than like a key worker. A bit weird. Anyway, then one day he decided to introduce me to his cousin. Right, it was which is the next stage of what happened, right? So his cousin, like, we went round to his cousin's house. He wasn't best friends with his cousin or anything, but he introduced me. We went round there. He introduced me, and this guy Robert. That's right, Robert. Again, name changed, but this was really the start of or the continuation of something really big. And I went round to Robert's house, and he seemed to take a liking to me for whatever reason, and he decided that he would sort of integrate himself into my life and invite me back round there, even though I didn't really know him. So I went around there fairly often, and then he started coming around to my house, or to my flat, and yeah, he became like a friend. But it got to the stage, right, where I didn't want to go. What? No, I wanted to go home, because one night we went out for a drink. Right, we went out drinking. We went back to his house, and I was gonna go home, and he said, no, it's okay, just sleep on the couch, right? And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough, I'll do that. And then in the morning I was gonna go home, and he was like, why don't you don't have to go home, you don't have to leave, why do you want to leave? And it got to the stage where I felt like I wanted to go home, but I don't feel like I could say that I wanted to go home, because he would be like, why do you want to leave? What's the matter? Why don't you want to stay here? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll stay then. And this kind of this will be like a pattern, as you'll see in later episodes. But I spent a good deal of time at his house, and I just I it got to the point, right, where at one point, right, and this is very indicative of what he was like, right? I was at my house, right, at my home. Can't call it a house. It wasn't a house. It was a bedsit. Right. At one point, I was at my bedsit, right, and he was calling me. He was phoning me up. He'd been to my front door. I think I wasn't in at the time, but I just got home. He'd been to my front door with his girlfriend. We're calling her Louise, and he'd been knocking on my door and I hadn't answered, so they drove off. And he phoned me up and was quite knocked at the fact that I hadn't answered the door. Like, where are you? What are you doing? Why aren't you answering? Sort of thing. And it's like, what? Why? What do you want from me? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of what he was like. Anyway, but I did become like friends with him, like very good friends, I guess. And when time came, and I was telling him how, like, I was basically about to be evicted from my bedsit. You know, the one which I was so grateful to have like 6 months previous. Yeah, I was about to be evicted from that because I was not paying the rent, right? And and Robert said, why not get a flat with us, right? Him and his girlfriend, right? And I thought, okay, that could be an option. That's a possibility, I guess. So I moved out of the bedsit. I moved into his current house before we eventually got a flat ourselves, all three of us. And that's where we're going to end today's episode. You're going to have to come back for episode 2 because it gets very tasty as we go along. And you're going to find out exactly what I went through, what it was like for me. And trust me, it was worse than being homeless. So until next time, please come back next week for another episode of Beaten. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast episode. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.